I'm delighted that you're here, and we're really super excited to be working with Digitalme to combine their expertise and the integrity and trust they bring to the labor market and to lifelong pathways together with the work that we've been doing to, I think, create something which is going to have a tremendous impact on how people connect to opportunity. Let me just perhaps paint a picture of the problem that I think we're all trying to solve. If you think for a moment about how individuals in the labor market, all of us are somehow connected to the labor market. As individuals, we self-report what it is we know, generally on a CV or a resume or on a professional profile. But think about how education and training providers describe those very skills, usually with one line on a certificate, if that at all, maybe a course description. And most workplace learning, as Chris mentioned, goes unrecognized completely. And then thirdly, employers are writing job descriptions that approximate what they think it is they're looking for in candidates. So you have three different groups, all using a completely different language. And yet at the end of the day, they're all trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to understand what it is that people know or what they can do and whether it can be trusted. That's the problem, the inability to communicate across those three core groups within the labor market. So really what we're talking about is connecting the labor market with a common currency. And we think of that common currency as verified skills. You could think of it more broadly as credentials with a capital or a lowercase c. But we're arming individuals, education providers, and companies with a common approach to defining and finding skills. Now we're doing that in a digital manner, and I think that's what's especially new about all of this. What happens when you bring a verified skill or a credential into the digital world? Well, you bring the ability to bring a whole level of transparency. That one-line description is no longer a one-line description. It can be rich with data about specific criteria and what it is that somebody actually had to do or how it was assessed. It might even include artifacts like the actual work, as we just heard from Joe, evidence of people actually performing this skill or writing that memo that talks about their skill at writing disaster plans, or their video of them giving a board presentation, or whatever it is that backs it up. It might be a score report from a psychometrically valid proctored exam. But that's completely lacking today in backing up our credentials for the most part, and that can travel with a credential. It also brings a level of security that raises the integrity of the whole system. We know that relatively few people are likely to cheat or tamper with credentials compared to the overall population of people who have them, but the very fact that they could be raises questions for everyone in the ecosystem. Digital credentials are secure and tamper-proof. And we kind of come to expect this today with everything else we do, that if it's online, there must be some sort of data or insights to be derived from it. But imagine what could happen when we can start to understand the kinds of pathways that people are taking at a much more granular level, when we can begin to help create crosswalks between different occupations and careers, when we understand what techniques are actually producing people who are most employable or who meet their career goals. There's an amazing amount of data when you combine all of this that can be helpful to everyone in the ecosystem. And so that's a little bit about digital credentials. Now, if you're creating a new currency, you also have to have standards. And we think about the role of standards in other kinds of currencies and in other programs or efforts that have gone to scale. It's bigger than any one group, bigger than any one organization. We're seeing standards with digital credentials really driving this forward, and I see the standards through two different lenses. There are standards that are technical in nature, such as you heard the term from Chris and Joe of open badges, which is one of the earliest and most successful standards in driving this movement forward. But there are also frameworks involved as well, taxonomies, understanding how skills can be described in that common currency that we're talking about. And so we're seeing a great number of groups provide leadership in this space, and we're particularly excited about the leadership that Digitalme and City and Guilds has played in bringing this movement to where it is today. It also takes the ability to embed the ability to earn or have your skill made visible into the environments and the places where learning is assessed, and also where opportunities are rewarded. And we've been seeing a proliferation in platforms and places where all of those things can happen. We now have thousands of organizations who are recognizing skills in this manner. And what's amazing about it to me is they're not just in any one particular sector of the market, and they're not all just one kind of organization. There are higher education and vocational educational institutions. There are industry and trade associations, and there are employers who are recognizing the skills of their own employees and creating a benchmark or a way of understanding what skills are incumbent in their current workforce and where there might be gaps that require upskilling. So whenever someone says, do employers care about digital credentials, one of the answers is they do, and increasingly they're using this tool as a way of recognizing their incumbent workforce. But at the end of the day, this is a bigger story than any one badge or credential. It's about creating competency profiles for individuals that they own, where they actually have access to their data in real time. They can use it to pursue opportunities. And it tells a more complete and a more accurate story of what's possible. Just a few quick examples. This one from our neck of the woods in New York City. This is a community college in New York called LaGuardia Community College. They've recognized that they need to do a much better job helping their students be able to communicate the skills that their college experience is affording them. And so they've aligned a series of credentials to national standards we have in the states for workforce readiness. And every credential bears that alignment to those standards and is already being used by those students in applying for jobs. Talking about skills like ranging from service learning orientations to leadership and teamwork and collaboration. This is an example out of a university in the US state of Nebraska, which is fascinating in that they are not leaving it up to fate as to whether the credentials they issue will be accepted by employers and in the workplace. They're actually working in partnership with large companies, large banks like SunTrust, telecom companies like Verizon, do you have Home Depot here? Okay, I should have asked that before of somebody. Thank you. Okay. I knew you needed some sort of translator for me today. These are big companies. You have your equivalent. They're working in partnership with the educational institution to say, we will actually hire people and promote people who have these skills. The data behind it is more than just saying this person knows about professional retail management. It's giving the detailed view of the very specific criteria against which this person was assessed. And they're willing to put their stamp of approval and their brand on it together with the institution. We also know that employers care because we're starting to see more collective and scientific feedback from the field. This is a partner of ours called Wonderlic, which does assessments for vocational and so-called soft skills. They found that 83% of employers said, we have no idea what educational and training providers are actually teaching the students that are showing up at our footsteps. Is there a better way to actually get some insight into that? We would prefer a digital credential that we can trust and that we can search for and that we can use to discover these individuals. Interestingly, nearly 87% of the employers that they surveyed said that they would prefer having their local training providers provide job-specific badges that are verifying those skills. One industry and trade association that is responding to the needs of the labor market is a group called the American Institute for CPAs, which recently merged with CIMA here in the UK. They serve over 500,000 professional accountants. They're phasing out all of their paper certificates in favor of a digital credential, which answers that question that Chris raised about how do you see every skill, how do you prove it? And essentially now every accounting professional has a competency-based profile that shows that they have time-sensitive skills related to regulations and doing audits and all the kinds of things that people would expect the professionals who are serving them to have. So this actually serves consumers as well as employers. And we're seeing a lot of consumer-facing trades begin to use credentials in that way too. An important part of all this is communicating the story well to everyone in the ecosystem. All of us have a role to play in communicating the value of those skills. And groups like the AICPA are doing a nice job helping to tell that story of that currency that they're creating. But employers are also, as I mentioned earlier, getting involved in this ecosystem. One way they're doing it is by responding to the science that says that a competency or an achievement-rich culture, an environment that recognizes employee achievements, is one that's really good for business. This is a large insurance company that is taking the data from those credentials that we've been talking about, feeding them in real time into their talent management system, and allowing people to search across the company for people who have very specific verified skills. And they're now using the credentials as hiring requirements for promotion within the company. IBM is working with digital credentials to actually recognize achievement in real time based on performance metrics. So if you're a global sales or marketing professional and you exceed your quota in a given month, or your social media campaigns have produced a much larger pipeline for your sales channels, you automatically earn credentials saying you exceeded those performance metrics. What more can you say about someone's qualifications than that they are actually meeting the values and standards set by their current employer? And as I said, this has an impact on the bottom line and on the productivity of businesses. Recent research is showing that when recognition technology is introduced into a company, it increases employee engagement and retention, includes productivity, and ultimately can increase revenue as well. So it's really an easy story to be thinking about this. I just wanted to end with two more quick examples. One is, and I'm not sure that we necessarily have an analog to this here in the UK, but I think this tells the story about the currency really taking shape. This is a group called the American Council on Education, which reviews workforce training programs for its equivalence to college credit. So if you took a professional, a customer call center course at Walmart, or were a supervisor at Walt Disney World, you have important portable skills. But you might not have a degree, and yet a degree might be required for your continued advancement. So they are now issuing digital credentials to all of these individuals across the workforce who complete these programs. The credentials not only bear the ACE endorsement for college credit, but the digital credential itself includes the ability to request the transcript. So now you have the ability for employers to create pathways back to education and create and allow that digital credential to be the gateway to that new pathway. The second and last example to share is one that I think talks about the ability to achieve scale with the kinds of stories we're seeing happening at local and regional levels. I'm not going to test you on which US states you recognize on this, but if anyone knows any of them.
California?
You see, yes, you got California. I put them roughly geographically in Texas. And there's no, sure, Texas. Next slide we'll have Texas, but but let's just take this one. That's Colorado. It's so square, I know. When you take it out. Colorado realized that they had 15,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs every year in the state. And employers were coming to the community college saying, I saw in your course catalog you teach courses that should be preparing people for our jobs, but I have no idea which courses, which individuals, and whether for sure you're actually teaching those skills. Can you do any better giving us a window into the qualified talent? We would hire them in an instant. And so what they did was they created digital credentials that recognize each and every skill that the employer said they were hiring for but lacking in their talent pipeline, whether it's machining, welding, advanced 3D AutoCAD design, very specific welds and doing specific kinds of joints. They issue digital credentials as people complete specific assessments, as they work their way through different courses. It's agnostic as to what courses they took. All that emerges are specific credentials for the very individual skills. Those show up on a credential. They're all aligned to national standards as well, so it's not just Colorado saying these are the important skills. They've aligned it to national standards for metalworking and for welding and so forth. And now, the magical part is that employers are writing job descriptions that match what's in the credential, and they're starting to hire the people who are completing these programs. And it's been such a successful model across the advanced manufacturing within the state. They've now begun to do this for 21st century healthcare skills as well. And they're rolling out to IT and other areas. So at the end of the day, this is about a world where organizations have the ability to better understand and match skills to opportunities, where they can engage with their students or their employees in a very meaningful way by arming them with artifacts of their learning, regardless of whether they are promoted within that organization or find their way into another part of the workforce where they can better understand the skills that are resonant within the organization. And this is an interesting one we're finding. Many of you might relate to this, but the ability to send people off into the world with a credential or some official artifact of their learning is it's a relationship building opportunity. It's a branding opportunity. What better way to showcase what your organization offers than by the people who are ambassadors for those programs because they've benefited from them. And individuals are benefiting because they can convey just the right skills at just the right time. They can carry them with them and own them and find their way, as we just heard in some of those examples, to places that will reward them. But the one that's been most surprising to me to be hearing is when we heard from Joe, we heard a little from Chris as well, is that the very act of recognizing achievement is, and arming people with that artifact, is empowering individuals to better advocate for their own pathways, for what they want to do and what they can do. And so even before you look at the machine readability and the technical aspects of it, there's a very human story to be told about how this actually builds more empowered individuals. And I've been really excited to see that happen. Today you're all here in part because all of the movement around digital credentials, which has been driven through the leadership of Digitalme and the team and City and Guilds, is really at a new point where there's a lot of momentum behind this ecosystem building, this currency building. And we wanted to bring together the technology that's enabling this movement to grow at scale, together with the talent and the expertise in bringing meaningful credential systems to the table. And that's really what Digitalme Credly is all about, and we'll be sharing a little bit more with you, especially during the Q&A.